Hi mums and dads, we are going to be jumping into our second last study in the book of Joshua, and so this week we're going to be looking at Joshua chapter 14 from verse 6 to verse 15. We're going to do something a little bit strange with the Sunday school lesson on Sunday, in that we're actually going to go back into the book of Numbers, and I'm going to start with the children in Numbers because Numbers records the Joshua and Caleb when they first God first told them and the nation of Israel to go into the promised land and to check it out. And what we're going to be looking at in Joshua chapter 14 is the fulfillment of God's promises that he had made in Numbers. So why don't you just pause the video and read Joshua 14 verse 6 to 15 for yourself. And as you read it, won't you just note Caleb's zeal and faithfulness for the Lord and his promises. Once you've read those verses, then pop back on and we can work our way through the verses in this chapter. So just a reminder that God had promised to divide the land between the Israelites and to give each tribe their inheritance. Moses instructed Joshua to oversee the fulfillment of this promise, but Caleb was to be the first to receive a special portion of the land. In verse 6 to 9, like I said, you can go back into Numbers chapter 13 to 14, where it describes the rebellion of the people and the 10 spies who did not trust God to conquer the land 45 years earlier. They refused to enter into the land, and therefore God punished them by letting that entire generation die in the wilderness. Caleb and Joshua, however, had not rebelled, and so God promised to reward Caleb's wholehearted commitment by giving him a special portion of the land. You can read that in Numbers 14, verse 24. Now they are in the land, in the book of Joshua. Caleb came to Joshua to remind him of God's generous promise. Once again, Caleb was demonstrating his trust in the unfailing promises of God. Then in verse 10 to 12, Caleb testifies to God's faithfulness and his own steadfast commitment to wholeheartedly serve the Lord. Nothing had changed. Stepping forward to receive what God had explicitly promised was actually further proof of Caleb's faith. He acted on what he knew about God and his word. He had treasured God's promise for 45 years. Caleb's claim that he was still just as strong as he had been then was not boasting. He knew that there was much fighting to be done if he was to receive the inheritance that God had promised him, but he was ready to take it in God's strength. In verse 13 to 15, the land was granted, but it had to be taken by Caleb. The next chapter, in chapter 15, verse 1 to 39, it shows that its fulfillment. Caleb drove out the Amalekites who were living there, and he renamed the city, and he secured the land for himself and also for his descendants. Caleb is a great example of wholehearted, lifelong commitment to the promises of God. 3 times in this passage we are told that he wholly followed the Lord. Look in chapter 14, verse 8, 9, and 14. God's promises are received by faith alone, but faith continues in obedience and is rewarded. I wonder if you wouldn't just take a few moments for yourself to reflect on this passage. Won't you just think about what has God explicitly promised that he will do for all those who trust in Jesus? Which of these have you already received and which are you yet to receive? Then secondly, is your zeal for the Lord as strong today as it was when you first believed the truth about Jesus? What will it be like in 20 or 45 years' time? And thirdly, won't you pray that God would do what is necessary to ensure that you wholeheartedly serve him and hold fast to his promises to the end? And once you've prayed that for yourself, won't you pray for your children as well? And when you're done praying for them, won't you visually think of other people in our other families, in our congregation, and won't you pray these things for them too? I hope that you'll have a wonderful time on Sunday, and I pray that as you ponder these things during the course of the next few days, that the Lord will really work in your heart, and that this will be an encouragement to you as a family on Sunday morning.